welcome to the Earth Feels podcast.
I'm Rose.
And I'm Christine.
Welcome to Earth Feels, the podcast for people feeling overwhelmed by the endlessly gloomy climate news.
Where every week we have soul-based conversations about climate change and explore the idea that climate change may be happening for us as much as it is happening to us.
If you are ready to shift your focus and secure the future for our kids and our grandkids, then this is the podcast for you.
And yes, we do know how to spell.
Hi, Rose.
Hey, Christine. It's so good to see you after.
It's good to see you. It
After
has been
weeks.
a while.
Yeah, months.
Yeah. Wow, what a summer.
It's been crazy town here in the United States.
It's slightly less crazy here, but we're not out of the woods. We can't be too superior up here in the north.
I feel like you should be.
Yeah.
It's really crazy town down here with COVID, with the wildfires in California, Colorado, and tropical storms down in Louisiana.
So it's wildfire season, hurricane season, or tropical storm season. Still COVID. How many? 150,000 Americans have died from it?
178,000. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Yeah, 1.2 million acres in California alone burned. It's the size of Rhode Island.
And having just been evacuated myself on August 10th, we had the fire that was a few kilometers, so that's a few miles out of town, just sprang up really quickly, and within a couple of hours we had to evacuate.
I cannot relate to that, but it does strike fear in my heart to even hear that. So when you think you may be leaving your house for the last time, what do you take?
Yeah, that's a good question. First, because if you're a researcher, you go online and find out what to take in an emergency.
Thank the goddess for Google.
As long as you still have internet and power, you're good. So passports, I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah.
One of the lists said house deeds. And I said to my husband, do we even have a house deed? So apparently we don't know where our house deed is. So that's my job now that we're back and our house is still standing. Is just if I have one, or if not, to get another copy.
That's good to know because I don't think I have mine either.
Yes, exactly. So let's put that on our list. That's maybe the tip for our listeners. Find out if you have a house deed, and if you don't, get one. And if you do, put it somewhere where you can grab it and your passports. Now,
these are all things we should have in our safe or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go at a moment's notice.
But you know what? What it came down to was really, you could leave with almost nothing, right? Like some underwear and some clothes and your passports and your wallet. But what I did grab was a box of our digital photos that are on CDs or DVDs. Everything else is replaceable, although you really hope that you don't have to, obviously.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, and my computer, because where would I be without my computer? So what are we going to call this episode? Is there room for compassion? Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
How about COVID-19, wildfires, and climate emergency? Where do we go from here?
That's nice and long.
And speaking of long, the 4-year, or maybe I should say the never-ending U.S. election cycle is coming to a conclusion in a couple of months in November. So what's going on that front? Because it does have huge implications for the work to tackle climate change. Who gets elected?
So the Republican wasn't really a convention. Last night was a 2-hour infomercial, and speaker after speaker after speaker, and I'm talking like they seemed like they were robots. They all spoke. It was all recorded. I don't know who's doing their editing. It's a production that's put on by the people that did The Apprentice. And it is slick and it's sheer propaganda. and they're talking about how the Democrats are socialists. They're going to bring low-income buildings. Suburbia is going to be destroyed. I mean, they're taking away our guns. They're opening the borders. There's going to be Armageddon in the streets. I mean, it's like, holy sh.
So I recently heard an interview with Jeff Charlotte, who's an investigative reporter and has written a number of books, most recently, The Family, The Secret Fundamentalism at the Heart of American Power. And he was interviewed on the Visionary Activist Show. A shout out to Carolyn Casey, who does an amazing job in her interviews and in her discussions about visionary activism for our times. But what Jeff Charlotte says is,
if that's what you truly believe, who would you vote for? You wouldn't want, the prisons opened. You wouldn't want,
right.
And so he says, the Democrats should not be at all complacent. He said he's only trailing Biden by 9 or 10%. He said it should be 30 or 40. And he said the only thing that's making a difference is Corona. And he said Trump can't propagandize himself out of the coronavirus.
Every time he speaks, he calls it the China virus, the Wuhan virus. He's a brilliant marketer. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yeah, we're fighting for the soul of our country. Now I'm totally depressed.
Well, except that you don't want to be depressed in November.
No, I get that.
Prepared, and we want to do the work. For me, it's the spiritual work, because this is just dark stuff, and it's interesting because
Carolyn Casey says,
she's like, the Dementors, which I love her language. She just uses language so well. The Dementors want us to be polarized. They want us to hate them. They want us to react with fear and with anger. She said they feed off of that. We have to choose a different response.
That's really interesting, because what I got in my meditation this morning was, and it was part, like I woke up with it, it's about compassion. So it came about with Kellyanne, and I was talking to Pat Farrow this morning, and so at 8:00. And this was our conversation always gets to this really rich point where and it was brought about by Kellyanne Conway. You know who she is, right? Okay. So her daughter wanting to be emancipated, and so I had posted that on my Facebook page, and how I've got so much blowback from people that are furious with her. And she's a piece of shit. She's this, that, and the other thing. And I had just put kudos to Kellyanne. She's putting her daughter first. And so what's been coming to me is that we need to approach every person with compassion and know that we all awaken in our own time. This is just a mirror. It's a mirror for all of us. Mm-hmm. And looking at her, yes, she hasn't made the best decisions for her family, but starting September 1st or starting this week, she is. She's doing what she needs to do. And was she unaware? Yes, she was unaware. No mom wakes up and says, how can I mess up my kid today? Can we meet the moment and say, where have I messed up as a mom? Where have I not been aware? As a mom, as a friend, we all make mistakes. We're on this human journey together, right? And we all have our own cadence. It's asking us to look and see and know that just because I feel like I'm on the right side of things, well, those people feel like they're on the right side of things too. Can we stop the judgment? Can we speak our truth without vitriol? Can we look at one another, extend a hand, listen, really deeply, deeply listen to one another, and operate from that? It's like you take it in, but and it's all up here in your head, but you have to drop down into your heart.
That is our challenge. And for me, that I frame that as a spiritual battle, as opposed to it's a mental battle, it's an emotional battle, but it really is darkness versus light. And it's not that Trump is darkness and Trump's followers are darkness. It's that we all have that darkness in us. And it's a mirror, like you said, and now we have to deliberately choose to respond differently. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. And we've 2,000 years later, yeah.
Still not doing it.
Pretty hard. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, it's this battle of I'm right. And it doesn't matter what your side you're on. We're just as culpable if we stand there with our feet in the sand and say, look at me, I'm right. Well,
you're not only I'm right, but you're are wrong. So wrong.
Right. Yeah. And can we look at where have I been mistaken in the past? Where have I been closed-minded? Where have I not seen the truth? For whatever reason, whether it's financial, whether it's generational, whatever reason, can we look at ourselves and say, I've been there. I get that.
I've messed up. We all have.
We all have.
Yeah.
Can we be compassionate enough with one another to say, I get it. Yeah, I get it. It took me a while to figure it out too.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one, but here we are. And where do we go from here is our question today.
And the backdrop to all this politics is California and Colorado are on fire.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff. I mean, the drought for California and Colorado as well, very dry. And so the land is dry and the water, of course, our friends at Nestle are pumping from the aquifer. I don't see it abating anytime soon. So what does that mean?
Well, and what does it mean in the context of that you were telling me recently that the climate platform of the Democratic Party, which was included in our Best in Climate last week, after you read that, you said the party took out canceling
for subsidies for fossil fuel companies. Yeah, and to the chagrin of most environmentalists, were Move On and 350.org, and people are pretty up in arms about that.
As they should be, because do you know that in 2009, at a G8 meeting, G7, I don't know, it's been G7, G8, Canada and the US and the other countries committed to reducing and eliminating
fossil fuel subsidies.
That was over a decade ago. Mm-hmm. So the writing was on the wall then. And even now in 2020, the Democratic Party doesn't have the guts to stand up to that lobby. It's alarming. However, I'm going to slip in a piece of good news.
Please do.
Yes.
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Bill McKibben, for alerting me to this on Twitter. Exxon, which used to be the richest corporation on the planet, is now off the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Why?
Because its net worth has decreased to the point where it has something to do with Apple shares were redistributed, and then that meant more tech companies came in, and Exxon has dropped off.
Wow.
So
that's good news.
That's amazingly good news. And what that says to me is their influence is going to be waning because, I mean, they still have, I don't know, it went from like 565 billion in 2007 to 189 billion. So that's, it's less, but it's still a whole lot of change.
Still more zeros that I can comprehend.
Yeah. But that's what's going to happen is they're just not going to be as compelling. They won't find the audience that they have had for decades because of money talks. And so they have less money. So that's good news.
Well, it's interesting because after putting that up on Best in Climate, I was really excited, to read that. And the more I edited it, the more I read it, it was really like sinking in, and I was like, wow, we actually have some teeth in the game. And then to find out that they rolled that back, that they took a step back from that, and it, without any discussion, it just disappeared from the website.
Oh, there was discussion. You just weren't party to it.
Well, okay. So yes. Okay. Thank you. The public wasn't party to it. So it just changed on the website, and everything I'm reading is saying, because of the power of the lobbyists, in order to be elected, Biden and Harris feel like they can't push back to the extent, because they need that investment to help them win this election. Otherwise, they're pushing the oil and gas companies into Trump's corner and saying, you have to back him because we're gunning for you, which makes sense. I mean, it's probably just one pundit's opinion or several pundits' opinions, grasping at straws here, I guess. There's a lot going on, and it feels pretty heavy right now. How do we go forward? How do we maintain hope and go forward?
Well, much of the last 3 months has been doing my own work, my own personal work, and also going deeper into my soul detective aspect of my energy healing. And so not everybody will share this perspective, but there is this perspective of everything that you can see that's going on, the Trump rallies, the Biden, Kamala Harris partnership, and there's that, like, what's going to happen there with the material appearances, and then there's what's going on underneath, which you and I were talking about a podcast that I shared with you recently that I know you haven't listened to yet, but it's from the Visionary Activist podcast of Carolyn Casey. Carolyn brings spiritual approach as well, in her own unique way, to her topics.
I mean, we know that love and kindness are the solution for everything. I mean, great thinkers from Gandhi to Martin Luther King to
Jesus,
Jesus, Mohammed. I mean, all the way down the line, have let us know, have seen humanity in a way that love is the answer. John Lennon, love is the answer. And that means for all of us. That means for those of us who feel like we stand on the side of Black Lives Matter, and we stand on the side of no kids in cages. Just because we feel like we stand on the right side doesn't mean we don't have to have compassion for those who are not making their best decisions yet. And when they do come to the point where they're making those decisions, we need to be there with our arms open wide and saying, welcome.
Metaphorically, in the time of COVID.
With your mask on. But yeah, it's about compassion. Can we love each other through this? We're all just walking each other home. We're all part of the one. We're all part of the one. We're walking each other home. So I don't see a therapist, even though I probably should. I have a spiritual advisor. And what he reminds me continually when I fall, when I stumble in my on my spiritual journey, is that we are all expressions of the one. So that means we're all underneath it. We're all part of the one. We are all the one, but I'm expressing it as Rose. And that means I'm expressing the one based on all of my DNA, all of my generational stuff that I've carried forward, all of my experiences, my childhood wounds, all of that. I'm expressing the one with all of those little tweaks. And Donald Trump is expressing the one based on all of his wounds, all of his familial, generational, the stuff that his dad did, the stuff that his great-grandfather did, all those things that are cumulative. We're all expressing the one. Can we know that? Can we look underneath all the surface trappings and see we are all the same? Can we love each other enough to look beyond the guy that has a MAGA hat on? Can we be curious? Can we sit with him and say, talk to me about your experience? Or do we just scream and yell and flip him off? I mean, I know what I want to do.
Well, and
I know
that's
what my
thing.
journey is, to be at the end of the day is, we all want to leave this lifetime our souls being as elevated and as pure as we can. Is that why we're here? This is a time of the mirror is reflecting back everything, especially here in the States right now. It's, our years and years of consumerism and throwaway society, throwaway goods, throwaway people. This is a huge wake-up call for humanity in general. Love is the answer.
And about compassion, I was just going to say, let's remember to have compassion for ourselves when that isn't our first response. I have to say, on Facebook these days, there's some stuff that I could set me off. And my response now is, I'm not even responding. I'm just muting that person for 30 days. And that person will never know. And that is just my loving way of saying, you be you, and I'll be me over here. On that same kind of note, just to inject a little bit of humor, maybe we can put this on our page. I found, maybe on Twitter today, this meme that has got a picture of a woman sitting there, and it says, "Woman living in moment," in quotation, finds that unfortunately it is connected to other moments.
Yeah.
So let's just acknowledge it's hard. This is not easy, and we're not going to be really good at it. We just need to practice it. And
right,
I think
because we've never walked this before. None of us have ever walked this before.
Exactly.
So none of us are perfect at it.
Exactly. So that, I think maybe one of these days we'll have to talk a little bit more about The Gentle Art of Blessing by Pierre Pradervand. I think I've mentioned it before, but the idea is everything that comes towards you, you bless that person. If that person has an angry response to you, then you silently, probably it isn't best to say it out loud, but you bless them in their peace, their tranquility, their wholeness, because we all have that, like you say. So that is a challenge. So I would say, where do we go from here? Well, we're walking each other home, and our challenge is to do it with more compassion than we have shown each other up until now.
Agreed.
All right. Is there any good news?
Yeah, there was actually a bit of good news. I mean, I think there's probably lots of things in the 3 months since we've really had a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I was excited to see was that California, has taken a stand on the automobile emissions that Trump was trying to roll back. And California met with auto manufacturers, Volvo, Volkswagen, not Toyota. There's a few that aren't included. I'll have to include the link. But California state and the 13 states that follow California have determined that they are not going to downgrade. They're not going to roll back emission standards as the Trump administration had said they were going to do. They've dealt directly with the car manufacturers, and the car manufacturers are excited about that because if they have enough states on board, then they can make their emission standard uniform for all states and set it to the higher standard. So
thank you, California.
Yeah, thank you, California. I mean, ultimately, we would all like to be driving EVs when they get to the electric vehicles, when they get to a point where it's actually affordable for the average person. But until then, we are part of the paradigm that uses fossil fuels, and we need to be using the least amount as possible.
Mm-hmm. I'm tempted to ask you about your Tesla purchase. But
yeah, I'm still, so that was one of the conversations we'd had earlier. I've been test driving a Tesla. I'm 95% there. It's at this point right now, I'm like, do I order a new car or do I just wait for my old car to die? Because there is the resources of having a new car built. I mean, that adds to it too. I do want my next car to be an electric vehicle, and I love the Tesla. The Model 3 is just, I've got the color, I've got it all just pretty much decided, and it's just like, when am I going to pull the trigger?
Right. Well, so then it's a matter of when, not if, maybe. And I won't need to send you the link to the article that my husband was telling me about, which showed they just did a general survey of car drivers in the U.S. I don't know how many people they checked with, but about their satisfaction with their car.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla Model 3 was the highest rated in every age group.
Wow.
Yeah.
It
People
is
who have Tesla
a blast
3s
to drive.
love their cars.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. Well, and our action tip, I would say, is to remember to be gentle with ourselves and compassionate with ourselves. And if we can, when you come across somebody in person or on social media or whatever it is that elicits that response of fear or anger or lesser selves, to consider deliberately choosing a different choice. And you could even, following Pierre Pradervan's advice, try and send them a blessing.
Nice. And I would say, for a sanity tip, I saw this meme, and I'll see if I can find it. It's about slowing down for your response.
Exactly.
Instead of having that knee-jerk reaction, take a moment before you respond. And for me personally, I know that if I can wait to respond, sometimes an hour, sometimes it's a day, the longer I wait, the less need I feel to respond. And there's such a peace in that.
Love that. Well, that seems like a good way to conclude our
welcome back episode.
Our welcome back, exactly. Our launch into fall 2020 episode, which, as we know, is going to be an interesting one. How many days until the U.S. election?
Well, I don't know when this is going to air, but it's 72, something like that.
All right. So it'll be it'll be in the 60s by the time this airs. So
yeah.
All right. Steel yourselves. We are going into battle, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. That's this week's episode of Earth Feels. Special thanks to singer-songwriter Kristen Hoffman for generously allowing us to use Song for the Ocean. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Children of the earth, I'm calling out. There's a mission for you and for me.